Herbs and spices add fabulous flavor and color to food without adding salt, fat or sugar, helping foods look more appetizing. The terms herbs and spices are often used interchangeably and are sometimes referred to as seasonings. However, they are different. Herbs are the leaves of low-growing shrubs and include parsley, chives, thyme, basil, oregano, rosemary, and more. Herbs can be purchased dried, fresh, or as a paste, and are typically thought of as an unwoody plant. On today's episode, we are in Kiambu County at Seedlings, Herbs and Spices Propagators to talk to Nikli, the proprietor, and explains about their farm.
My name is Nikli, and I'm one of the proprietors of Herbs and Spices. Basically, what we do here is to prepare seedlings for commercial farmers or for gardeners. So for commercial farmers are the people who are interested in seedlings for large-scale production or for commercial productions. People who are doing maybe 1 acre, 2 acres, 3 acres of a specific type of herb. So we propagate for them. We also have gardeners, people who want to do 1 or 2 herbs for their garden, or people who are interested in a few seedlings for maybe small markets they have, maybe their nearest mama mboga around within them. So all of them we produce seedlings for them. We also produce seedlings for resellers, people who are making gardens, people who are doing landscaping, people who are doing foodscaping. So we give them the seedlings. So we have all packages to suit all our clients.
If you have ever planted a seed or stuck a stem in water until it forms roots, that you stuck it in a pot or planted it in the garden, you have experienced propagation. Some plants are easier than others to propagate, and different methods work best with different plants. There are different types of spices and herbs grown in Kenya. For herbs and spices propagators, they deal with a lot of types, and all these have different functions depending on the need of the clients. Propagation is the process of creating new plants from a variety of sources, such as seeds, cuttings, bulbs, and other plant parts. There are 3 main ways to propagate herbs: through seeds, cuttings, and division. Most plants can be started by all 3 methods. For herbs, the quickest way to get more plants is from stem cuttings.
So in propagation process, we have 2 main categories. We have herbs which we regenerate by way of seeds, and we have herbs which we generate by way of vegetative propagation. These are cuttings, and a few for tissue culture. So all the herbs, we generate them here depending on each category. For example, for the common herbs, things like basil, we use the seeds. Things like thyme, we use the seeds. Things like marjoram, tarragon, those ones we use vegetative propagation. So by all those means, we are able to produce seedlings for different herbs which we propagate here. Currently, we are producing around 118 types. Of the 118 types, mostly some are culinary, which we use for flavoring our foodstuffs. The one you see, maybe things like oregano, things like basil, things like rosemary, things like lemongrass. The others are for medicinal purposes, things like neem, commonly called morubaini in Swahili. We also have other Indian herbs like kalmek, garmar, and others medicinal herbs, which we also propagate them here. For the 2 types, there are other specific types, which we call them ornamental or for other purposes. These are things like lavender, which are used for insect repelling. We have others like citronella, which are also used for insect repelling. So for the insects, they can also, others use them for making biopesticides. So those are the other categories of herbs which you also propagate them here.
The propagation process has its own requirements, and for the herbs and spice propagators, their clients' requirements is what guides them.
So basically the process for propagation or regeneration of these plant materials takes between 3 weeks to 4 weeks. Others, on extreme case, 8 weeks. So it depends. Things like basil, which those ones can take even 3 weeks. And also another factor for determination is the client. Clients who are buying seedlings to go and plant them maybe under a greenhouse, they can take very small seedlings and they'll still continue growing. Farmers who are using maybe open field, no specific designed irrigation system, they would require well-hardened off seedlings, seedlings which have matured well. So those ones would also take a longer time. So those are the categories which determine. But generally, on average, between 3 to 8 weeks, we are able to deliver the seedlings to the client.
The propagation process takes place in a greenhouse. Greenhouses allow you to control the temperature and humidity required for seed propagation and young seedlings to grow. Because of this controlled environment, you can actually start seeds in a greenhouse anytime. In the greenhouse, there are activities that take place. The cuttings need to remain moist, but not too wet. One waters only if the soil is dry or the water in the Cocopeat is below the stems. It is advisable to keep the new cuttings away from the heat and direct sunlight.
Yeah, the daily routine activities that we undertake in the greenhouse and also open field are the normal crop management processes, right from watering. We have a team which waters the crop. We water the crops depending on the weather also. We do normally twice, or if on a gloomy day, then we can do it once a day. So we also have a team which ensures that we have crop maintenance like trimming of the crops, especially the herbs, to ensure that they are in good form. We also have others who are able to do the nutrition of the plant, to ensure that the plant has the required nutrients so that we're able to deliver healthy seedlings to our client. So there are also some crop protection. Some of the herbs are very sensitive to either pests or diseases, things like basil, things like chives. So those ones are sensitive, which require some crop management. So those are the activities we also do. We apply some crop protection chemicals to ensure that the crop is healthy and also good for our consumers.
Once the herbs are rooted, they are transferred to the open garden or to a bigger pot in the greenhouse. Germination will begin when certain internal requirements have been met. A seed must have a mature embryo, contain a large enough endosperm to sustain the embryo during germination, and contain sufficient hormones to initiate the process. The best time to take a cutting from your plant is during its active growth season.
Other activities we also undertake is the planting. So there are the ones which we plant via cuttings. So we prepare cuttings a day in advance. We prepare our planting material, normally Cocopeat for the commercial farmers and compost for the gardeners. So for the compost, we ensure that it's fit for purpose depending on the standards that we observe as a nursery, and also to comply with both local phytosanitary standards. So we ensure that the seedlings that we produce is free from any pest or disease. So we prepare in a specific way, which is required. Once we prepare them, then now we do the sticking of the cuttings, if they are cuttings. If they are the seedlings, then we drop the seedlings into the specific holes of the propagation tray. So basically the propagation tray is something like this. So this is the propagation tray. And then now we stick the cuttings just like these ones. And then after a while, then we have a seedling like this. So the media you see here is Cocopeat, which it helps the plant as a media to hold the roots. So a plant like this is ready to go to the field to be planted. So the process also, the process for regeneration would vary with every crop. There are sensitive crops, things like oregano, things like tarragon. Those ones are very sensitive crops. So we increase their management in terms of controlling mostly fungal diseases. And at some point also, once we are hardening them off, they can be predisposed to some pests. So others also you control them. But basically, most of these herbs don't require a lot of crop protection because naturally they are self-protective or self-preventive on their own mechanisms because of their smell, their taste, or the specific chemical ingredients which naturally the plant have. So crop protection is minimal, unlike things like skooma, cabbages, and the other things. The same way once it goes to the field, so you don't require to use a lot of pesticides and a lot of fungicides. Again, these are crops which are eaten raw, so you need to maintain minimum residue levels to the lowest standard, maybe in accordance to Global CAB or in accordance to fair trade terms or any organization that provides standardization.
We take a short commercial break right now. Don't go too far. Welcome back to Spice It Up. If you just joined us, today we are in Kiambu town at Seedling to learn how to propagate herbs and spices. At the greenhouse, the propagation process takes place in a soilless medium. The soilless medium is any sterile medium for growing plants that doesn't involve soil. They are soilless media made from organic and inorganic materials. These materials are often used with fertilizers, which ensure plants receive all the nutrients they need to thrive. The soilless medium reduces the transfer of disease and keep high phytosanitary standards. Moreover, it also helps calibrate a farmer's nutrient medium.
The soilless media is, in terms of propagation of the seedling materials, the highest phytosanitary standards can only be achieved by some of the soilless media, because if you are working with soil, then there are some soil which maybe they have some diseases, some pests in it, or some soil-borne diseases, or even other things like pests. So the best thing is to use a soilless media, normally Cocopeat, peat moss, but here we use Cocopeat. Or the other people who use also pumice. Again, in terms of standardization of nutrition, if you get, for example, soil, it has maybe some manure in it. So sometimes it becomes a challenge to be able to balance the nutrition, because you don't know basically, like, unless you test for the soil so that you know this soil is specific to this and then I need to add this and this to make this plant healthy. But for the soilless media, it's easy because you know it's a zero nutrient media and you're able to calibrate your own nutrition levels to know at this stage of the plant I need this, at this stage of the plant I need this. So you're able to fully control the production of that plant. Yeah.
Cocopeat is a natural fiber made out of coconut husks. The extraction of coconut fiber from husks gives it byproducts called cocopeat, which is a 100% natural growing medium. The cocopeat is dried in the natural sun and processed to produce different items, namely the cocopeat block, cocopeat briquettes, cocopeat tablets, and many more. Loose cocopeat is often referred as coco soil. Coco soil, being a porous and well-drained medium, helps the plant to have strong roots, thus making it an excellent growing medium for hydroponics. Cocopeat has to be desalinized and cleaned since it is gotten from soil which are made up of a lot of salt. Herbs and spices propagators use these to propagate the herbs, as it is a perfect rooting medium.
Cocopeat basically is a byproduct of coconut plant. When you see a coconut plant, it's the plant itself is in terms of the seed. There's a cover that covers the coconut shell. So in between the hard shell of the coconut and the outer covering, there's usually a flesh. So that flesh is grinded, and then it's sieved, and then now you can use it for the planting material. Yeah. And then there are some things which you need to do it to desalinize. Desalinization, because most of the coconuts grow in coasts, and the soils are made of a lot of salts. So, and the plants don't like salt. So it has to be cleaned to a certain standard which it's able to support plant life.
In a situation that one cannot find the cocopeat, soil is possible to propagate the seed, putting into consideration the need.
No, you can use any type of soil depending on your target clients and also your capital level. So any soil can work, any media can work. There are people who use cocopeat, others use pumice, others who use soil, others use compost. It depends. For example, this specific lot here, the ones you're seeing we're planting, these ones we are using compost. There's another lot, like on the other side, we're using cocopeat. So it depends with the target market, and also your capital also, it varies, and also your clients. There are other clients who prefer, like, I have this specific order and I need this plant to be produced in this way. Especially those maybe The other people who are interested in organically produced or natural produced seedlings, then those ones you have to use compost or soil. The others who are interested in high phytosanitary standards, then those ones you have to use Cocopeat or any other soilless media. So it depends for anyone who needs to venture. It varies with every level. But of course, the standard rule of the propagation system is to use soilless media, so that at least you use either transboundary or from farm to farm infections levels, so you're able to reduce. Because again, you see, in a small nursery like this, we're able to reach almost 1,000 farmers. So if we have a problem here, that means we're able to share to the other farmers, which can be perilous. So it's important to maintain high phytosanitary standards.
Proper greenhouse design, environmental management, and cultural practices are key to the successful propagation of unrooted cuttings. The propagated plants in the greenhouse need specific conditions for it to get to maturity stage. The temperature and humidity need to be controlled, and one needs to make sure the required standards are met. This enables the seedlings to do well and reach the maturity that is ready for the market. The market dynamics of the herbs varies depending on the type of herbs and spices one is dealing with.
Normally the main parameters that we control here is temperature, but it varies with stage of every crop. For example, when immediately we do the seeding or the sticking of the cutting, that is the time which we need high moisture levels, we need high temperature levels. So for the cuttings side, now the high temperature will help the plant to be able to root faster, and again the high humidity will ensure that the plant contains a constant moisture level which we need so that the plant cannot wither. So after 7 days, normally most of the plants would have rooted. Then we remove them from the tunnel and then we put them into an open space. At an open space now, the crop is a bit hardened off or a bit ready to acclimatize with the existing environmental conditions. So at that stage now, then the requirements become minimal. The normal temperatures for the crops and the normal humidity levels, then we maintain the same. But with the protected sheet of the greenhouse, we're able to reduce the intensity levels. And again, if you look on top here, we have a shade net. So the shade net also will help to, just in case we have excess UV radiation, then the shade nets again cut. This shade net cuts sun intensity by 50%. So we need a shade so that the tender cuttings can be able to survive before they start rooting. Once all of them have rooted, then we take them to the normal greenhouse, which now they'll be exposed to the normal weather conditions and in a process to harden them and to prepare them towards the field conditions. So that is basically how we're able to handle the two. When it comes to the seeds, it's easier. After normally 5 days, most seeds would have rooted or sprouted. But there are special cases, things like asparagus, which they take around 3 months for the seeds to sprout. So those ones are special cases. But on average, most of them takes normal 5 days. So after 5 days, once they are rooted, then we maintain them in the shade. After a week, most of them would have always gotten the first seed leaf. So after the seed leaf, then we take them to the normal greenhouse. That is now the process of starting to get maybe 2 leaves, 3 leaves, and now start to hardening off and to prepare them to the field conditions. So the normal requirement here is usually high temperature, high moisture, and of course to ensure that the environmental existing sanitation is very high, especially when you're dealing with cuttings.
Thank you for watching Spice It Up. Stay tuned for more spicy content same time next week, and kindly remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Farm Kenya in case you missed our episodes.